Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. Welcome to the Clutter Fairy Weekly for February 4th, 2020. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast now where we offer organizing strategies and tips and answer your questions and tackle topic suggestions from you, our viewers and listeners.
I'll have a few quick notes for anybody joining us for the first time, and I see some new names on the list in Zoom.
So welcome, everybody.
If you're participating in the Zoom meeting, you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to the next topic. You can also use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom window on laptops and desktops, and I think it's also at the bottom of the screen on phones as well, to let me know that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. And I'm probably going to call on a couple of people today.
Ooh, look out, everybody.
We had several people who were willing to join us on audio last week.
Right. We're also streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share questions and suggestions there, and then Ed relays them to me because I can't watch everything and talk at the same time. During the live webcast on Tuesdays, you can talk to us directly by phone, 669-900-6833, and use the meeting ID 993-419-863 to join the meeting, and it's up here on the screen as well, so it'll be there the whole time if you want to call in that way.
Okay, Gayle, let's get to it. So Bernadette, who participated last time and who is here again today, mentioned Swedish death cleaning in the context of the conversation we were having about Marie Kondo's book and organizing philosophy. Swedish death cleaning the full title is The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning: How to Free Yourself and Your Family from a Lifetime of Clutter. It came out in early 2018. And it is by Margareta Magnusson, who said she's between 80 and 100. She's actually about 86. And it's a little tiny book, just over 100 pages. And I think the biggest contrast between this and Marie Kondo is the age of the writer. She's 86, I guess 84 at the time she wrote the book. And Marie Kondo is 35, so it's a very different perspective, and it is based on the principle of dostädning, I think that's how it's pronounced, which is a Swedish word which means death cleaning. And Gayle, I'll let you take it from there.
So the key message of the book, generally, like the 100 pages, the basic message from that 100 pages is get rid of your stuff before you die so your loved ones don't have to do it for you, which is a perfect summation of the whole thing. And she basically talks all around that concept. And Ed pulled out some favorite quotes here. One of them is, you can always hope and wait for someone to want something in your home, but you cannot wait forever. And sometimes you must just give cherished things away with the wish that they end up with someone who will create new memories of their own. And we talk about that a lot in terms of sometimes you have to put it on the river of stuff and let it flow away from you and trust that it will, wash ashore at someone else's house and it'll be okay. And it won't all end up in the landfill. And you don't always know. And that's her version of saying the same thing. Sometimes you give those cherished things away and wish that they will end up with someone else. Another one is how we would prefer to arrange things if we fall ill, and how we want to be treated when we are dead are decisions that are within our power if we face and take control of these inevitabilities. I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day about, it's the wife of a client. She is doing some treatment for metastatic breast cancer. So she had breast cancer and went in remission, and now she's having problems again. And she's in her late 70s, and her will is not signed. And part of my dealing with the client was to take that, get the will revised with the lawyer, and then have that will taken to her to be signed. And so he went and talked to her about it, and her reaction was very, oh my God, why are you making me look at my will? She got distressed about the concept of the practicalities of here's the things that we need to get done against your inevitable passing. And I think a lot of times we don't take control of these inevitabilities, as she says, and then we don't arrange things to accommodate the fact that someone is going to have to come up and pick up behind you. And because we don't want to face our own mortality, and I get it. Nobody does, but you can see that the person who is 35 is having a whole different conversation than the person who is 86. She is looking down the barrel of this inevitability, and she had things to say about it and about prepping for it. And so it's a really great way to sort of face and think about, I am actually going to die, as much as I don't want to think about it, and here's some things we can do about it to get ready. So there's some critiques about the book, and so we wanted to talk about that first. It's more of an inspirational book than a practical guide, so it's not like you're going to get a real fancy, complicated, comprehensive system or a plan about organizing out of it. It's really just inspiring you with the idea of that it's important to do this work. And so there's lots of personal anecdotes, and some of them don't have anything to do with the topic of the book, but she is sharing a little bit of her life story. So in terms of a how-to book, that's not what this book is about. It's really a get inspired book instead. The pros about the book are it really resonates with older viewers because it has that perspective that's different than a younger writer on the same topic. So Marie Kondo's process is, she's writing about a young family and taking care of her young girls and managing her life and her business and her husband's work, and her point of view is completely different. And so someone who is in middle age or older than that is going to find this book more accessible and more timely, I guess is the way to say it. Many people like the author's style and personality, and they find her voice charming, and it's a short, easy read. So you can stop and start really easily. The 100 pages goes quickly, and it'll be a good sort of goosing book. Like, let's get going. You'll like it a lot.
There were a lot of funny bits in the book. She
has a mature point of view that is
well, and she's Scandinavian, and so her boundaries are maybe not so she doesn't have a lot of boundaries, actually. She rags on her children, and she talks about she actually mentions a dildo collection. And,
oh my gosh, oh how funny.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so we recommend the book, and it is a great way to sort of change, because we talk about reframing how we think about clutter and how we interact with clutter here a lot. And so she definitely is creating a frame, a reframing around the topic of getting organized. And one of the reasons is so that you don't leave this burden for your children. And it's a great way. If nothing else in your life is motivating you, lifting the burden off your children is another way to come at it in a frame that might help you stay focused and keep going.
Yeah. Excellent. Before we go on to our feature topic, I want to remind our viewers and listeners that we have more than 100 videos on a wide variety of organizing topics on our YouTube channel at cfhou.com/YouTube. If you watch our videos on YouTube, you can subscribe to get notifications whenever we post something new.
I have to say that, we've been doing it for a long time, and so the earlier videos, the technology is not great. We're slowly, redoing old videos that have really horrible sound or have a lot of dropouts or whatever. We're trying to eliminate those. But if you need the support to be playing in the background while you work, we have 100 hours of talking, so we can be there with you for as long as you need, is what we're saying. Oh my gosh. Okay.
We also have Eloise watching from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. And so
Guadalajara, hello.
Hello, Jalisco.
Yes, we appreciate it.
Jaime's family is from Jalisco.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
And Randy is watching from the burbs of Chicago.
Hey, Chicago, are you guys cold or not cold, I wonder?
Okay, our featured topic today is the clutter life cycle. This is an idea we came up with, a way of looking at all the different phases of your relationship with stuff to maybe change some of your thinking or shift some of your habits.
Right? We can frame a lot of the psychological issues related to clutter in terms of the decision making that happens at various stages in the life cycle of a possession. So we're going to try to go through those life cycle stages. If we cultivate the habit of examining all of our decision making related to stuff, we can make shifts in our behavior that will add up to a less cluttered life. So here are the phases that we came up with. And the first one is the intent. This is initial phase number one, the intent. So we're thinking about adding stuff to our lives. And for some people, they think about it for a long time. And some people, that thinking about it is about 2 seconds long before they move on to the rest. But some people think about it for a long time before they buy. And so some of the questions that come along at this point are, why do I want this? Where did I get this idea? Did it come from an actual need? Or am I responding to an exterior pressure from social cues or peer pressure or advertising, for God's sakes? Like, I clearly went and bought my Subaru Ascent because the Subaru Ascent commercials started coming up on there, and I was looking for a car at the time. But seeing that advertising made me aware that the product existed and that it was the size that I wanted, and sent me straight to the dealership. So, we end up buying things because we see ads. So that's part of it. Does it fit my personal style? Does the thing serve only one function? And if so, how critical is that function? What's the value that this thing will add to my life? So this is all things to ask yourself as you are thinking about the intent. Phase two is shopping, where you're actively considering a purchase. So now you're online or you're in the store shopping. Where does the pleasure in shopping come from, and how much of the thrill comes from imagining that different image of ourselves? So once we have this thing, we're going to be sexier or cooler or more effective or efficient. We have an image of how owning this thing is going to change who we are. Can I be satisfied with window shopping? I contend that you can walk around in the store and shop and put things in a basket and then leave the basket somewhere and walk away and have just as much fun as actually buying it and taking it home. So
And it's cheaper.
And it's a lot cheaper. And I have also done versions of, I walk around and put things in the basket, and then before I go to the checkout, I stand there and look at all of it again and go, no, and I start taking things back out of the basket. And so we all have our own version of knee-jerk response to stimulus as we're standing there looking at the pretty stuff in the store, and we grab things because we have an immediate, oh my God, that's pretty, boom. But we don't have to have that be an automatic purchase. Like, it doesn't actually have to come out of the store. Maybe we just look at it and go, that's so cool, and you drive it around in the cart for a while, and then you just leave it in the store and let somebody else have it. I think we get a lot of entertainment from shopping, and you might want to see if you can wait a week before you actually want it and go get it. Like, if you see it today and you think it's fabulous, and then you go, okay, I'll come back next week, I'll think about it. Next week, it may not be as cool. The bloom, it may have faded for you. And so it's all about recognizing that there's a moment between your immediate knee-jerk response to this thing and whether or not you actually have to have it, and does it really serve a purpose, and are you really going to need this when you get it home? Okay, so here we've gone from shopping to acquisition. So now you're actually taking possession of the goods that you bought. And is there, you can ask this question, is there an alternative to ownership? Instead of actually buying this thing, can you, in books, for instance, you can go rent the books from the library, check them out instead of buying the book. There's tool and equipment rental places now where they pool the tools and you rent the tools, like you go and rent a U-Haul or you go and rent a carpet cleaner at the store. You can go and rent those tools and not own them. And that means that you have it for a little while, but you don't keep it. There's music and video streaming services, and that is a version of you stream it, you don't buy it, right? We used to all run to the store and buy movies at Blockbuster. We would rent movies at Blockbuster, but then we would buy them and buy DVDs, and you don't have to do that anymore. You can stream that stuff instead. And so you can still own the music, which, you know, basically you're owning the right to play it, but you don't have to have the record or the CD in the house. And so when you go to buy, is there a way for you to do it besides actually owning the physical object? And is there a less expensive option, and could I buy this thing used? So you might be buying it brand new, and you might want to stop and say, wait, what if I buy something used? Then you're participating in extending somebody else's clutter life cycle, right? Like somebody else bought it new and now they're putting it out and you're buying it secondhand. Then you are the person where it's coming off the river and washing up to you for its next life. So that's an alternative when you're going to acquire it. Maybe it's out there used. This is the point where gifts are inserted into our life. So when you are buying a gift for somebody else, you are doing the intent and the shopping, and then like you're doing the early parts of the life cycle, and then you are giving it to someone else, and it inserts into your own life, to recipient's life at the acquisition point. So you've bought it and then you hand it over as a gift. And so I receive a gift and I have no input on all of the previous portions of the life cycle of that object. And so oftentimes you get a gift and it is not your style, it's not your taste, it's not something you need, it's a fail in terms of your life. And so this is why I always say, once you take possession of the gift, it's now your thing and you can determine its life. And if it is not something that you want, then taking it and sending it on to someone else in whatever form you do that, through sale or gifting or donation or whatever, is your right to do. And so that you don't end up with a bunch of stuff in the house that is not stuff that you care about and you just saving it out of guilt. And so you always want to be thankful, and I want to say thank you to that person in a very sincere way, and then quietly distribute it how you wish, basically.
Gayle,
okay, yes,
before you move on to the next phase,
yes.
We've had a lot of comments that I want to share that
throw out
kind of pertain to the intent and shopping and buying phases. Bernadette said, referring to the buying, I know where it comes from for me, or at least partly, impulsive actions from my unreliable ADD brain.
And
that is
100% true.
Bonnie said, the older I get, the less I like to shop for anything except groceries. I guess that's a good thing, and I'm right there with her. That is my only shopping. Jaime does all the other shopping.
Yeah, Jaime's younger, right?
Jimmy said, I find things on Amazon that I do not need, but then I can't stop thinking about them, and I eventually go buy them. And Bernadette commented, I believe that they call that one compulsive shopping. You feel compelled and obsessed by the passion to own that object.
So I have some things to say about some of that. So let me start with the ADD brain. I think that's why I think that you need to interject a moment between I put it in the cart, whether that's virtual or physical, and actually going to the checkout counter. And so you know that your brain is going to be, oh, look, shiny object, oh, look, shiny object, right? Like you're going to be grab. But then you can pause and go back and look at what's in the cart and go, okay, but do I really need that? And use your ADD brain, the ability to be distracted, to help you get out of the shopping as well. If you see something virtually and think that you have to have it, go put it in the cart, but don't go to check out yet, and be distracted by your life and come back to it later. And I think that If you're in the store, you can do the same thing. It goes in the cart, and you make your way. When you're ready to leave the store, you don't have to just blindly walk up with everything in the cart. You can stop and before you get anywhere near the checkout and pull things out again. Like you can just go back in and say, okay, that was fun. I entertained. I was distracted. My ADD brain let me pull all this stuff. And now I can go back with a more discerning eye and say, yeah, that was entertaining, but I don't actually need that. And you can just stand there and take it all back out. And, you know, there are people there to put things away, and it'll be okay. You're keeping somebody employed by giving them something to restock. And in the meantime, you are thinning your herd. And, you know, you might let yourself have a little parameter like, I know that I'm going to fill up my cart and I'm going to overbuy and I'm going to be stimulated in the moment and pull things into the cart, squirrel, you know, shiny, look, sparkle. And you know you're going to do that. And so you should just assume that you're not going to buy half of what's in the cart. Like I'm going to fill it up and then half of that's going to be not necessary. And I know I'm going to stop somewhere and take half of it back out. And if you can do that, you can sort of work with, I'm going to walk around the store and be distracted. And then when I'm ready to go, then I can pause and thin the herd before it ever gets into my car. That would be worth it. And I think that the thing about doing the online version, and I see it online, so I would regulate how much time, you know, try to thin how much time you spend looking at Amazon. If you know that it's a trouble spot for you, find something else to go watch and be distracted by so that it's not all about shopping. You know, I like to watch cat videos and big cat videos. I follow Big Cat Rescue in Florida, and so I go watch them feeding the lion, and here's the sand cat, and, you know, find something that you find compelling so that while you're shopping, you can go, I should get off shopping for a minute and go do something else for a bit. And sometimes just breaking the focus will help, but at the very least, it will slow you down. And I would put things in the cart and make it sit there for a week before you allow yourself to buy it. Like it actually has to sit there for a week. You can't buy it 24 hours later. You have to let it age in place. And that takes
Bonnie said that very thing. She said, I put the item on a list in Amazon, then rethink it, most often finding it was an impulse. And I've kind of made that my policy. It's put it in your cart, but don't ever buy what's in your cart the day you added it.
It goes in there, yeah.
Unless it's something that you started out planning to buy. You know, you set out to buy a particular thing because you have a definite need.
Well, Amazon relies on you. You know, they make it super easy so you don't have time to think. That's the whole goal for them. And the whole Prime, you know, immediate delivery, like you buy it and it shows up the next day and you don't have any time to regret your purchase until after it's arrived. And they do that on purpose because that's how come Bezos is a bazillionaire, right? Because of instant and delivery and instant everything. And so you just need to think, okay, I don't need to help him get richer. I can wait a minute before I buy. And I can put it in the cart and then I can go look at something else on the internet instead. And, you know, it'll be worth it.
I wanted to add, Charlotte from South Florida said, I overbuy food in the refrigerator also and waste a lot. And that's a real problem for a lot of people. We've tried to make it our practice not even to put something on the grocery list unless we have a specific plan. So, you know, Thursday we're going to make chili. So we need this, that, and the other from the grocery store. I go to the grocery store and I just see things and I go, oh, I could really do something with that. And then that goes in the cart, but I don't realize that, well, I'm also going to need some celery, and I need to replace another block of Parmesan cheese, and if you don't buy those things for that particular plan at the same time,
then you can't do it.
You're just buying something that's going to age in your refrigerator.
Right.
So,
and you know, it's the same kind of thing. You may have moments as you go through the grocery store that looks like a good idea, but then you have to look at it and go, okay, this is a lot of groceries and I cannot possibly cook all these before it goes bad. Like I know that this week I have a meeting at night and I'm going to be out at lunch with my friends on Tuesday and whatever. if you give yourself that pause before you go to checkout, you can look at that and go, what was I thinking? And make it an experiment. Like, sometimes I think we give ourselves abundance because it makes us feel safer, like we're not going to run out of things. Have a little experiment at the grocery store and buy a whole lot less than you think that you need, and see how it works. Like, you already know that the volume that you're buying generates a lot of waste on the back end, and so cut it and make an active trip to cut it in half, and then see if you run out of something, or see if you have a problem. Like, maybe you just need to have the experience of, okay, I'm going to purposely not buy as much and see when I have a problem. And you may find that you don't, and you can get by with a lot less. I think, the idea of insulating ourselves against scarcity prompts us to fill the fridge more. But the truth is, in this day and age, unless there is a hurricane or a tsunami or something that disrupts the food chain, we can go back to the store if we're out of something. And so, barring a natural disaster, the truth is you're not going to suffer. If you are short something, then you'll be able to solve the problem the next day. And so experiment with drastically cutting what goes and see what happens.
Okay, a couple more quick things, and then I'll let you get back to where you were.
Okay.
Jimmy added, I shopped for months for a new keyboard and kept talking myself out of it. Then I found a good deal, bought one, and it has been sitting on my shelf for 6 weeks. And then he added, whenever I want to check Amazon, I should go watch the Clutter Fairy on YouTube instead.
I think that's an excellent idea. The Clutter Fairy will talk you out of stuff. Actually, watching, organizing YouTube will just remind you that today's purchase is tomorrow's clutter. So you can absolutely interrupt yourself. I think that's a brilliant idea. Thank you, Jimmy.
Karen on Facebook said, I am doing a 1-month challenge of no online shopping.
Ooh.
And
brave.
And Zena also said, I put items in my watch list or wish list, then walk away later if I need it. Then I buy it.
Right?
And then
I think there's just you just have to interrupt the impulse.
Yeah, here's a really fun one from Charity on Facebook. This is talking about the idea of going and looking at things and then leaving without them from the store.
Yeah.
My mother calls this going to visit my stuff at the thrift store. This habit has greatly reduced her clutter intake and her ability to declutter her space to a very efficient home to dust and keep clean. We now enjoy these trips with her rather than dreading it.
That's so funny. So she goes to visit her stuff at the thrift store.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And the thrift store is the keeper of your stuff. That is super cool.
Yeah.
I love it. That's a great idea. That's hilarious.
So lots more comments, but we better move on with the program.
Yes. Okay, so here is the next phase in the life cycle of clutter where you actually use it. So you're making this thing a part of your life, and the questions around that are, does this thing need to be a part of my daily life? Should it live in my purse or wallet, on my kitchen counter, in the hall closet? What are my clutter hotspots? So how can I keep this new thing that I now have in my possession from ending up in the hotspot? Where does it need to go? How much time and energy will it take to maintain this thing? Does it need dry cleaning or temperature control or special cleaning or maintenance? So that's something that when you bring it home and the thrill of shopping is over and you actually have bought it, you've acquired it, and now it's home, you have to start thinking about, how do I fold this into my life? Where is it going to live? How often do I have to get into it? How do I have to take care of it? So a lot of us skip that step and the thing sits in the bag in the closet for a while. You actually have to come home and work it into your life and your space. So the next phase would be in the life cycle would be storage. So now you are making space for the things that we don't use as often. so you've used it, you've had it, and now maybe you're not using it as often, or you bought something that you don't use more than once a year, say it's a Christmas thing, or you know, it's a particular yard tool that you only use a couple times a year. How much space am I willing to give up to things that I use once a month or once a year? What are the trade-offs I'm having to make to accommodate living with this thing? What else could I have or be or do if I let this thing go? So this is a good place when you get to the place where you feel like you have to store the item instead of have it in daily use. Then it's time to ask some more pertinent questions about, why am I storing this? Why am I giving up storage space to this? Is this a good place where it's now not part of my daily life and I don't want to come back to it, and I can't solve this problem another way later? If you can't solve it another way later, then you know, maybe you want to keep it and store it. But if you can solve that problem another way later, then you might want to let it go now instead of storing it for 5 years and then letting it go. So the next phase that Ed created around this life cycle is called Disenchantment. And I have to read the things he wrote about. It's very funny. So this is where you're falling out of love with your stuff. You no longer think it's the coolest thing ever. And he wrote, the bloom is off the rose. The new thing has lost its luster. The honeymoon is over. Familiarity breeds contempt. So you get the idea. At some point it is familiar and it's not the newest whiz bang thing that you have, and you're disenchanted. And so now you start to ask questions. Does this item serve my current goals and lifestyle? Is this still part of who I am? This happens a lot where you know, it went with, an example would be a kid was into soccer and you had all this soccer equipment, and then the kid aged out of high school and stopped playing on the team, and now you have all this gear and no one in the house is playing soccer, right? So yes, it's still useful, and yes, you can still play soccer with the gear and the net and the whatever, or field hockey equipment or baseball equipment. Like, I've been in garages that had kids who were active in sports, and you end up with all this gear in the garage that is age appropriate. So the size, like maybe the kid is 10 when he starts playing baseball, and there's all this gear that goes with little kids and that's not useful for him when he's 17. He may still be playing baseball, but he can't play with the little version of the stuff because the glove is too small and the stick is too short, the bat is too short, all that. So there's all this stuff that is, it eventually stops being current and stops supporting your lifestyle. And this is the time where storing it in the garage or leaving it in the house somewhere to basically rot in place until you throw it away 10 years later. Why not look at it now and go, yeah, yes, he played baseball with all these pieces, but we can now let them go to another round of 10-year-olds who will make perfect use of this object. And there's a version of that story about everything that stops supporting something that you used to do. It happens in hobbies. I used to be into paper and now I'm into felting. I used to be into quilting and now I'm into sewing. Like, there's always shifts in your attention and your interests, and you have stuff that goes with all those things. So letting them go when it stops being a priority and a current activity of your life it's a perfect intersection point to start letting things go. So then the last, and which brings us to the last stage of the life cycle, which is letting things go when the time comes. One question you can ask yourself is about repurposing. Can I find new life in this thing by putting it to another use? If you are turning stuff into craft supplies or downcycling in some way so that it stops being used for what you originally used it for, but you can find some other use for it. Now, that isn't to say I can imagine another use for it that I'm not going to actually use right now. What you want is, can I use it right now for something else? And if you can answer that question yes and go use it, then you are disposing of it in a different way. But
yeah,
if not, then it's time to rehome.
That's a trap that people have to avoid. It's very easy to say,
I could use this.
I could use this. This might make
maybe.
And then you have to have the follow-up question ready. When am I going to do that?
Yeah, and if the answer is I don't know, then that's because you're just making up a reason to keep it.
Yeah.
So time to let it go, y'all. You can also ask yourself, in terms of rehoming, will somebody else be happier to have this thing than I am? So sometimes you can be keeping it, but if you look at it and go, you know what, I bet, so in my example of baseball equipment, another 10-year-old boy, some little baseball team would be thrilled to death to have these bats and gloves that are age appropriate, size appropriate, and they would be thrilled to have them right now. And that's more important than me looking at them and go, oh, look, this is the glove that John played with when he was 10. So take a picture and give it away. And then you can also talk about how to dispose of it. What's the most practical and ethical way to get rid of the stuff you don't need? Do you want to donate it, free cycle it, creative reuse centers like we have Texas Art Asylum here, where they're all about taking something and finding a new purpose for it so that they're repurposing it away from its original intent to be something else. Consignment and garage sales, eBay, all those things are ways to dispose of it. And then recycling, you want to think about what's the best for the environment, and you don't want to wait until the end of the object's life to think about what's going to happen to it when we're done with it. The example is we might consider, before we purchase anything that's made of plastic, whether there's a more durable and an easier recyclable alternative. So if you're going to buy something, maybe you want to think about, how is this going to end up in the landfill later? Am I going to really be able to recycle this? Is there something that doesn't create as much trash when I buy it, when I get rid of it in the end? Might be able to buy something better. And then of course, just contribute as little as possible to the landfill. And the best way to do that is to try to repurpose, rehome, and dispose of in a way that involves giving it down the river of stuff to someone else. That is the summary and end of the life cycle. By the time it goes to disposal or trash or recycling, you have moved it along and it has stopped being clutter for you. But you can tell that all along the way, from the minute you conceive of the idea to when you actually take it to the recycling place, there's a whole lot of intersection points along that life cycle where you can decide, do I really need to keep this? And I think we think about buying it, we bring it home, and then we store it and we stop thinking about it forever. And that's how you end up surrounded with a bunch of stuff that you really don't need and you really have a hard time living in.
There's a whole lot going on chat, way more than we have time to share, unfortunately. I wanted to ask, Bernadette had a couple of further thoughts on Swedish death cleaning, and I was hoping to talk her into saying some things to us herself. So I'm going to unmute her. Bernadette, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, Bernadette.
Would you share a couple of your extra thoughts on Swedish death cleaning?
Well, what really worries me is I reckon it's so hereditary. We are both huge Packrats, and I dread the day that my Packrat collection joins their Packrat collection and I just drown. I'm tempted just to build a big bonfire and burn the whole lot, but you can't do that. There's precious things in there.
Well, I've heard that, scorched earth solution before. It always seems like a shorter path to just fire the whole thing up.
In a big country, we have lots of space. Our houses are huge, and we just fill them up and then fill up storage containers and fill up storage rooms. I can't imagine.
Well, and it's a big project at that point.
Yes.
I liked your comment that it's sort of difficult to raise this topic with older relatives, and so you forgot your copy at your parents' house.
My aunt's already read it. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Did it help? Did it engage some conversation when she read it?
Yes, she liked it. She's like, oh, I thought that was a very nice book. And I was like, oh, yes, I also thought so. What do you think?
Let's talk about that some more. Well, and I have to tell you that people who, there is a genetic component to, when you look at somebody who is diagnosable across the clinical diagnostic line with hoarding syndrome, there is a chemical difference in the brain. There's brain differences that are related to how people evaluate stuff. And somebody who is, you know, sliding up the Packrat scale, there's probably a genetic component to, you know, that's why you sort of see clusters of families who the parents held on to a bunch of stuff and then the kids hold on to a bunch of stuff too. Like, you're learning that behavior, you're modeling that behavior to your children, so they learn from you. But there's also some genetic support in their brain probably to continue to do it like you do. And so that's why intervention becomes so important, because should you, someday when you pass away, you're basically going to double their collection by your house full is going to become their second house full, right? And so anything that you can do to fight your nature and work on thinning that herd would be important. And while you have modeled the behavior of Packrat's lifestyle, you can also model coping with it. And so sometimes you're just showing people what they can do instead of explaining it to them, right? And so as you start to make shifts and changes, it will suggest to them that they can do the same. And I've seen lots of people who just get started because someone around them has started doing something already, you know, like they see the results of, oh, look, there's a nice clean space over there and she's been working on it. And now I suddenly am aware that I feel more comfortable and it looks better and it makes me calmer in my brain. And so you can model that behavior as well. And it makes it worth it. You know, it's a lot of work. I mean, you're fighting against a lot of habit and tradition and focus that you've been doing all of your life, and trying to shift that, you know, turn the boat around is a lot of work. And I used to describe this as when a cruise ship tries to turn itself around, they sort of sails into a canal and then it goes, it moves back and forth a million times to turn itself 180 degrees. And it takes, you know, 45 minutes to turn the ship around. And this is the clutter equivalent of that. Like when you've been doing it one way for a long time, trying to turn the boat around takes a lot of effort. And sometimes it seems like setting the boat on fire is a better idea. But you can make headway and you can be excited about small incremental movements of the boat. And you don't have to make a 180-degree turn overnight in order to be proud of yourself or feel successful. You just need to make slow and steady behavior changes over time. And you will thin the herd and model that behavior and make it easier for everybody.
Yes, that will send it all to your siblings. You.
Right? Exactly.
Thanks, Bernadette, for your input, and thank you for letting me put you on the spot.
Thank you.
So, Gayle, what are your final thoughts on the clutter life cycle?
So our relationship and stuff is really complicated by the way that things reinforce or diminish our ideas and images about ourselves. We use stuff to tell a tale about who we are and tell ourselves who we are, and it makes it hard to let some of that stuff go when we feel like it's part of who we are. There's research to show that people whose values, I'm reading a quote here, people whose values center on the accumulation of wealth or material possessions face a greater risk of unhappiness, including anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, and problems with intimacy. And this is regardless of age, income, or culture, which is why somebody who has a whole lot of money could be drowning in stuff too. The accumulation of wealth and material possessions really changes how we view the stuff. It creates the ability to be the greater risk to be unhappy is what this person's saying. And the guy's name is Tim Kasser. He's an associate professor of psychology at Knox College in Illinois, and his book is called The High Price of Materialism. This is a great way to think about, I don't just want to accumulate material possessions to my own detriment. I want to have a better life than that. Something only becomes clutter when it ceases to serve us, or when the service it provides is exceeded by the time and effort required to keep it up. Since we're the ultimate judges of what clutter is for us, we can take responsibility for the decisions we make all along the way. So all along the life cycle, from the first point it crosses our minds to bring a thing into our lives until the day we let it go. And if you can interject evaluation points all along the process, you can slow accumulation, and you can let things go way sooner than you have before, and it will help improve your sense of well-being in your own space. That is the bottom line here. And we hope that you're able to do that for yourself, because we want you to be happy in your space.
Thanks, Gayle. That's great.
You're welcome.
A reminder that our next webcast will be on Tuesday, February 11th at noon Central Time. That's U.S. Central Time, live in Zoom and streaming on Facebook. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To receive notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup.
Yep.
You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe.
I'm losing my signs.
We always love to hear from our viewers and listeners, so please send us your questions and topic suggestions in the YouTube comments, and you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thank you. It was great to see you guys, everybody. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you participating and chatting so much and supporting each other, because ultimately we're trying to build a community here where everybody feels like they're not doing it alone. And so we so appreciate all the ways that you do that and all the comments and questions you have. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.